Polarity management is a way of dealing with problems in organizations when there's two sides who both think they're right and they don't agree. It's a non-dualistic approach to understanding problems, which seems very similar in some ways to Eastern ways of thinking, like the yin-yang system in Chinese medicine. Polarity management theory is the brainchild of Barry Johnson. The approach was inspired by experiences he had in 1970 as a theological student in the United States.
And in that time, I started an internship program at that first year to understand. I was living in East Harlem in this internship program, understanding what life was like for the urban poor. And I ended up staying in East Harlem for 5 years. And during that time, I got more and more involved in concerns about how organizations, even nation states, were functioning in ways that ended up being cruel to many and inequitable. And so I was in protests all the time. I was the director of clergy and laity concerned, the office manager of clergy and laity concerned about Vietnam, for example. At the end of the 5 years, I left seminary 50 years ago on a quest. And the quest was, how might we create systems that work better for everyone?
In 1975, Johnson had his eureka moment. He realized that many difficulties in society are based on a particular kind of thinking. We identify a problem, there's a hole in the road. We identify a solution, fill the hole. Problem solved. But in human organizations, like churches, the problems we face are not always so simple. Let's say a church doesn't like its music. That's the problem. But there's no consensus on the solution. One group wants to change the music to make it more contemporary. The other group wants more soloists for the traditional music. Both sides think they're right, and only one side should win. This is called either-or thinking. But Johnson saw that there was another possibility, a both-and approach. What if both sides have a point, and they need each other for the entire church to be healthy? When both sides are needed for the health of an organization, it's called a polarity.
Polarities are interdependent pairs. They show up in life as a pair. For example, inhaling and exhaling. Nobody's going to spend time arguing whether we should inhale and exhale for the future. We know that we need to inhale to get oxygen, we need to exhale to clear out carbon dioxide. And so over time, we have to include both poles because both poles need each other. Another example that's very basic to all of us is activity and rest. So we need to get up in the morning, go to work or do whatever we do, be physically active, and then we need to rest from that. So it's a 24-hour cycle. We engage both activity and rest. What we don't do is we don't get in a fight over whether I'm going to have a life that has activity in it or a life that has rest in it. We actually need to do both because they need each other.
Johnson developed the polarity map to illustrate how this works. It's a simple box with 4 squares. Each approach gets one side, one pole, top and bottom. The top square includes all the positive aspects of an approach. The bottom square contains the downside of that approach. In our church music example, the modern music approach has some clear advantages: more popular sounding music, and a band that may attract new people. But it has its downsides too. It may cost more, be loud, and turn off some of the existing congregants. On the other side, adding soloists to the choir could make the traditional music sound better. It might bring back some people who had left. But on the downside, it might cost too much and turn off people who find old hymns boring. In this example, the people who didn't like the traditional music pushed for the new music. They ignored the needs of the traditionalists, and that meant that some of the older people stopped coming. And they stopped donating to the church, which made it all more expensive than before.
All polarities, if you over-focus on one pole to the neglect of the other, you get the downside of the pole on which you over-focus.
For Johnson, the best approach is to listen carefully to both sides. Have both groups fill in the boxes together to assess what all the problems and opportunities are. Once people know they've been heard, they become more sensitive to the problems in both approaches.
There's two dimensions to seeing, by the way. The first is the dimension of seeing whether there might be a polarity here that we can agree on. But the second part of the seeing step is the reminder that seeing is loving. And if I could see the person who is opposing me in this discussion, in this interaction, if I could see that person completely, I know that love would be a natural byproduct. And this process is engaging in an opportunity to see them completely and to, in fact, love them.